Hey friends, it's Sarah, and happy Pride Month! It's June, so that's Pride Month, so I have another selection of queer books to talk about with you. This year I'm doing one queer book for maybe not quite every genre, but a wide selection of genres. So regardless of what you like, I think there should be a queer book in here for you. These books are all ones that I've read over the past years since I made my last queer books video. So there are definitely other books that I've already discussed in previous videos that would fit any of these genres. So I'll link my other videos recommending LGBTQ plus books, so you can check those out as well. But we're just gonna start off with nonfiction in general. And for that one, I have Rainbow History Class by Hannah McElhenney. Not sure if that's how you say it. This one I gave 4.5 stars. It's a, as it says, history class about LGBTQ plus people, and all the way from like Greek and Roman times to the present day. I think Hannah does a TikTok series about this, and now it's been compiled and made into a book, and there's all sorts of like cool little cartoon images in it. It's very simply written, so I think it could work for either adults or teens. And they'll have kind of like a time frame or a subject, and then there will also be a separate page that's like an icon from that time or like a very specific event, so that's really neat as well. It's very easy to understand, and I really enjoyed reading it. Next up we have contemporary fiction. This is contemporary adult fiction, and for that I have Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austen. This I could not rate because I don't know how I felt about it. It's very well written, but it follows a kind of like millennial lesbian, and she is just having a rough time of it. She's very anxious and depressed and having a hard time getting her life back together when she accidentally applies for and gets a job as a secretary at a Catholic church. So she's having to hide her identity, she's dealing with all of her mental health issues, and the whole book is written in a very kind of almost scattered way, like the way that your brain feels when you are in an anxious spiral. I think the author captures that really well. Too well, because as I was reading this, I was like, I feel like this is triggering my own anxiety. So it's very effective, but also too effective. It's too effective, we'll say that. But if you are looking for a really good and intimate look into mental health and a lesbian protagonist, then it was a great read. I can't say I enjoyed reading it, but it was really well done, which is why I can't rate it, because my enjoyment was like maybe 2 stars because I just felt so anxious the whole time, but then like the crafting of it is like 4 or 5 stars, and 3 stars doesn't seem right because it wasn't average. So I felt very conflicted with this one, so I just didn't rate it. There was also like a little bit of talk about like animals being missing and like animals dying and stuff. Not a ton, but that sort of stuff is quite upsetting to me, so I didn't enjoy that as much. Just something to be aware of if, like me, you do not enjoy any mentions of animals in distress. There's a little bit of that in there. Okay, up next is contemporary YA fiction, and for that I have The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School by Sonora Reyes. This one I gave 5 stars. So this follows a Mexican-American queer girl as she goes to Catholic school, which is also primarily white and like rich, and so she's having to hide her sexuality. She's also trying to keep her brother out of trouble because he tends to get himself into different messes, and she's trying like really hard to like hide her sexuality. She doesn't have time for relationships, and she meets Beau, who is the only openly queer girl at school, and starts to fall for her, and it's just a big mess. This one I really felt for Yamilet, the main character. She was trying so hard. She had so much like weight on her shoulders, and I just thought the author did an excellent job of like her struggle with wanting to keep up with her responsibilities, having to be the responsible sibling, but also like wanting to follow her heart and the like conflict that occurred inside of her because of those two opposite desires. So up next I have my pick for adult literary fiction, which is The Sleeping Car Porter by Suzette Mayer. So this book really had a moment in Canada, and especially in Calgary where I live, because the author is actually from Calgary and is a professor at the university here. But it won a whole bunch of awards in 2022, like the Scotiabank Giller Prize, the Canada Reads Award. It was a whole big deal. We couldn't keep it in stock at the bookstore. So I decided to read it because I was like, what's the hype about? And it was really good. This was another one where I really felt immersed in the character's mind. So this follows a Black queer sleeping car porter in Canada in 1929. So these were people who worked for the railway and were basically like the servants of the train. They like fold out the beds and like make the beds, they clean up everything, they fetch the passengers whatever they need. And because of the routes that they would take, so you go from like, I don't know, like Toronto to Vancouver, for example, in this book, it would be over the course of a week or two, I can't remember exactly how long, but like several days, and the car porters don't get much sleep. There's like one per train car, and so they get kind of 2 or 3 hours of sleep every single night. And this is what happens to the main character Baxter in this book, and he's starting to kind of lose his grip on reality a little bit. He's dealing with all of the passengers who have all these like unreasonable requests, where he's trying to like tread this fine line of like being a good porter and like attending to their needs without being overly present. And then they are like, why is this Black man near me? Because it's the 20s, and overtly racist. And he's just trying to make enough money so he can go to dentistry school and get out of this job. And then also Baxter is dealing with being like gay and having like secret liaisons and having to like kind of manage that and not lose his job. But this book was incredibly well researched. It was so well written also because you just really felt like you were getting sleep deprived along with Baxter. You kind of just like watch him slowly disintegrate, and he starts to see things and like have hallucinations a little bit, and you're just really like crossing your fingers and hoping that he's gonna make it through this trip, because you just want him to be able to get out of these horrifying working conditions. So I think it was excellent. I learned a lot actually from reading this book. I didn't really know about the train porters, and they were specifically like, they tended to be Black train porters, because it was kind of like the lowest position within like the railway workplace ladder, if you will. So any like white men who started as a train porter were very quickly moved up the ladder, whereas the Black men ended up staying in the bottom rung because of racism. It did also have me start reading They Call Me George, which is a more kind of like academic text about the history of the train porters. I've been reading that one for like 2 months. And it's interesting. It's just very like academically written, like it's written kind of like a mini textbook, so it's a bit of a slog to get through at times, but I have learned a lot of interesting things from it in the like third of it that I've read so far. So anyways, Sleeping Car Porter, excellent, and I think a good one for like a book club, because he has these kind of hallucinations and these different things happening. I think there's a lot to dig into there, so if you have like a book club, like lots of stuff to be able to discuss and be like, do you think this has any meaning? Up next, I have a horror book, sort of. It's Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield, which I gave 3.5 stars. So this is like a horror, but also kind of like a literary fiction. It follows 2 wives, and one of them is like a scientist, and she goes on a trip to like the bottom of the ocean with another group of scientists, with another couple of scientists, and then her wife is left behind at home. And so it has 2 different storylines. You have the one storyline where the wife is like going on this mission down into the depths where something starts to go wrong, and then you have the wife who's left at home kind of after the first storyline, when her wife comes back and like something's gone wrong and she's weird and she's not the same. It's kind of her trying to like mend their relationship and figure out what happened to her wife and why she's so different than she was before she left. And it's a little bit of like a creeping horror kind of in the like going to the bottom of the ocean storyline, but then also this really beautiful story about love and marriage and trying to make a marriage work, and how to know like how to help your partner, how to like reconcile a relationship when one of you has changed. So it's not really that scary, but it is like a little thrilling and tense, I would say, for parts of it. Now we have a YA horror book that is Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White, and I gave this one 4 stars. This one is definitely more horror. So this follows Benji, who is a trans boy, after he has escaped from this cult that kind of brought on like Armageddon and has these like monsters that like eat people. And he runs into another group of queer teens and ends up staying with them, and like kind of starts to fall for the main leader, who is autistic and gay. And it's very disturbing. There's a lot of like body horror stuff in this. Like at one point they're talking about like liquefying their organs and stuff. So it's quite gruesome. I'm kind of surprised I managed to make it through this, to be honest. But I think I was able to like detach myself enough to not picture all of the gore that they were talking about in this book. But yeah, so if you're looking for like a good dystopia, a body horror kind of thing, this is it. That was quite different from most things that I've read before, but it was very well done and a little traumatizing. Then I have a science fiction, so I read A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is an easy-weasy little book. And there were actually 2 of them. I think the first one was a little bit better than the second one, but they were both great. This one I gave like 4.5 stars. I think the other one's like 4 stars. So this is set like way in the future. Humanity made robots. Robots helped humans, and then the robots were like, I don't want to do this anymore, and they left the world. And so now we follow a monk who goes around and is almost like a psychologist. Like they're called sibling decks, and they go to different villages and they have like tea, and so they choose tea for people and then have like a little sit down talk with them where the people can like talk about whatever they want, get whatever they want off their chests, and sibling decks kind of listens and gives advice. And so sibling decks is on this mission, I guess. They're a monk, and they're kind of like uncertain about their purpose in the world. They're like, this, I feel like this is what I should be doing, but I'm not like satisfied. And they're trying to like figure out, you know, the meaning of life and all that. And they run into one of the robots. It's basically a scout and is like, should we come back? Like, what do the humans need? How are they doing? And so it joins sibling decks, and they both go on this little kind of adventure together, trying to figure out like, what is it that humans need? And like more personally, like what is the meaning of an individual's life? And it's just a very beautiful, philosophical, really like cozy kind of like science fiction. And so in this one we have sibling Dex, who is like non-binary. And then I guess the robot is technically non-binary too. It just uses like it pronouns. So Becky Chambers always does interesting things with gender in her books. There's always interesting uses of like pronouns and stuff. Yeah. Becky Chambers always writes incredible books. I love her stuff so much. And this one was really relatable to me because I can like relate to that. Like, what do I do with my life? Like, what's my purpose? Is there a bigger purpose? What am I meant to be doing with my time? You know, all those great questions you ask yourself. I think this is really beautiful and like very sweet and like heartwarming. So for YA fantasy, I have The Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas. This one I gave 4.5 stars, and it follows a trans boy in this world where it's kind of like Percy Jackson. People are like descendants of different gods, and they send their kids into a sort of like Hunger Games style competition where there's different challenges. They're not trying to kill each other, but like everyone like watches these different trials. So they do these trials because like the soul, the sun, needs to be like replenished to keep the obsidian gods, like the dark side, away basically. And so the winner of the Sunbearer Trials gets to go and like bring the sun's power to all the different temples in this kingdom, but the loser is the sacrifice who provides this power for the Sunbearer to bring around. So it's very high stakes. Someone's gonna die at the end of it. It follows this cast of characters who are going through these trials, and then our main character Teo is an ex-best friend who is like is one of the competitors as well. So it's really got those kind of like Hunger Games, having to compete against people that you don't want to lose, but also not wanting to lose yourself because you don't want to die. And yeah, it was just really good. It's got a lot of Mexican mythology to it, which was really interesting, and some good like action and fantasy. Yeah, if you like Percy Jackson and or the Hunger Games, then I think you'd enjoy this. Aiden Thomas has created a really interesting world. My next genre is adult contemporary romance, and for this I have Chef's Kiss by TJ Alexander. So this follows Simone, who is a pastry chef at this kind of like, it's almost like the Bon Appetit test kitchen sort of place, and her workplace decides that they want to transition to video, and so she's gonna have to like start doing videos and not just writing like recipes for like the blog. And they bring in a new like test kitchen manager who is non-binary, and they kind of butt heads because Simone doesn't want anyone else in her space, and Reyes just like literally a ray of sunshine. And so they have to work together, and it's kind of like an enemies to lovers situation. But it also deals with coming out in the workplace, because Ray doesn't come out as non-binary until later in the book. So it has that storyline as well of coming out in a workplace where you might not be 100% safe. And so this was like a really great romance. It like really reminds me of like a Bon Appetit like test kitchen before it all crumbled into flames. The cover is not fabulous. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a fan of this cover at all. But the book is super cute, so just like don't look at the cover and read the book. It's great. Then I have a historical romance because I have a lot of books that I want to talk about, so I decided to get really specific. And that is Something Fabulous by Alexis Hall. So I think I talked about this one in my mid-year book freakout tag, and I can put a link to that in the description. This is set in like the Regency or Victorian era. I don't know, ye olden days when like men and women can't be alone together and everyone's getting married for money reasons, and it follows. This is why I need Goodreads to be up, because I can't remember anyone's names and I have to go look at the descriptions of the books to be like, what's your name again? I can like sometimes picture them, or like I know the cover, but I'm like, who are you? Valentine, the Duke of Malvern, and he's supposed to be engaged to Arabella, but she runs away before they can get engaged because she doesn't want a marriage of convenience. She wants a love match. And so her brother, Bonaventure, or Bonnie, shows up at Valentine's house and is like, we gotta go get my sister. And Valentine's like, I really can't be bothered. Ma'am, how did you make it play music? Okay, I'm gonna hold the cat in hopes that she's calm. But Bonnie shows up at Valentine's house and is like, we have to go get my sister. She's run off with the maid because she doesn't want to get married to you. And Valentine's like, do I have to? And he's like, it's your fiance, go get her. Like, you gotta like do the romantic gesture and go fetch her. And Valentine's like, fine. And so they go on a chase after Arabella through the British countryside. And it's such a delightful dynamic between Bonnie and Valentine, because Valentine's very like grumpy and just like no nonsense, and Bonnie is like a little ray of sunshine and like a little bit annoying, and so they just he really gets on Valentine's nerves, but then, you know, he's real hot, and so Valentine's like, and they start to fall for each other as they chase after Valentine's supposed to be fiancé to be. And it's just great. It's so funny. These characters are so over the top and ridiculous. And I've talked about before that I don't think I should like this book as much as I do, because it's just objectively like so silly. It's like Regency reality TV almost, but it's really good. There are a few like steamy parts in it, but I just love like the banter, and the relationship between the two men is just hilarious. Oh, Daisy, you're still a good girl. And I gave this one 4 stars. Then I have a YA historical fiction, but not romance, and that's A Million to One by Adiba Jaigirdar. This is set during the Titanic, and it follows these 4 teen girls who devise a plot to commit a heist on the Titanic so that they can all kind of like get out of their situations. They're gonna steal a very priceless artifact, and it's gonna like set them for life, and they're gonna be great and live their own lives in New York, and it's gonna be wonderful. Except it's aboard the Titanic, and we all know how the Titanic ended. Not well. It did not make it to New York. So for the most part, this is just like a heist book. I don't know, maybe like the last 50 or so pages that deal with kind of the sinking in, all of that. But it was a fun setting for a heist because they're kind of running through all the different parts of the Titanic, and I love the Titanic, so like that was great. I gave this one like 3.5 stars. I'm not sure why, but Adiba Jaigidar's books for me are always lacking a little something. I don't quite click with her writing the way I want to. I love all the concepts of her books. I love all the covers of her books. I have 3 of her books, like I own them, but I always feel that her writing is missing a bit of emotion for me. There is a sapphic relationship in this book, and I just felt like it kind of came out of nowhere a little bit. But I don't know, maybe it's just like my personal preference for writing, so I don't think it's bad writing at all. I just think that her style of writing is maybe not for me, and maybe I should just stop trying to read her books because they're never a bad time, but they're never quite what I want out of them. But yeah, I don't know, let me know if you've read any of her books and what you think of them, because I do think they would really hit the mark for some people. It's just not me. Maybe they're just written a little younger than I expect. I'm not sure. This was a fun heist book and has some like intrigue. It's got some close calls and a sweet sapphic relationship. So those are all of the books in a million different genres. Hopefully there's something in here that you think would interest you. Let me know which one that would be. And yeah, happy Pride Month. I hope you're out celebrating and having a good time. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Now go read a book. Because he has like these hallucinations. Gallon? I think so though. Based on how you say McElroy. Gallony sounds maybe right. Oh my god, it's really hot. It's like 30 Celsius. Why did I wait so long to make this? I'm sweating. I'm really sweating. Ooh. Video person, what do they do?